Let's see. Nothing big that's coming out of them right now. They don't, and you actually see with the latest scan that just came in, a little bit more of those brighter reds northeast of Munfordville. So a little bit of a tightening here, strengthening with the rotation of this storm that's going to head north of Canmer, south of Pikeview. This, again, it's not one of those that I'm something, but it is worth watching for the next 30 minutes or so as this warning goes out until just after 6 o'clock, I believe. So it'll stay tornado warned for the next 30 minutes until 6 a.m. and that'll be for Hart County, portions of Greene as well, and far southern LaRue. That's going to be southeast of Buffalo that's still in this warned area. And I think that it'll move directly up into that portion right along the county lines of LaRue, Greene, and Hart counties there northeast of Pikeview. So at this point, we're going to have to stick with this for the rest of the morning. I know that we've got the guys out there, Jude and the whole crew, wanting to have some fun at Holiday World. And we know that there's no severe weather in that direction. But for the rest of us, the potential for severe weather, or especially our southern regions, does exist. You go north of the parkways, and I do want to go over to the green screen and talk about this very briefly here. You go north of the parkways, and we're only going to be seeing stratiform rain out of this. No severe weather potential up there. So again, parkways south. Severe weather potential, non-zero chance. We have that warning out until 6 o'clock with this tornado warning for a tornado possible. Radar indicated, not confirmed at this time. But you go north of the parkways, you don't see a lot of storm action going on here. It's just what we call stratiform rain. It's all elevated in nature. You don't have the same severe weather components. But what we do have in play down here is a screaming jet with a lot of directional change. So with those winds changing so fast near the area of low pressure, that's how you can get a quick spin up tornado in here that would usually be very brief, very weak. This isn't one of those scenarios that we're talking about something crazy for a long time. With the latest scan that just came in, it does look like things have tightened up just a touch, but not a whole lot. So the reds and greens are close to each other. It's a very small area northeast of Munfordville. And let me call out some of these roads here for the folks that are Johnson Springs Road, those that are north of Canmer along US 31 East, or Jackson Highway as some may call it. That's going to be an area where you want to make sure that you are heading towards your safe place. Again, I haven't seen any signs of any damage that's been caused at this point, but we'll watch that with the next scan that comes in, and we'll check correlation coefficient again and see if anything may be in the air. But at this point, there's nothing that screams that here at this moment. We got another 30 minutes on the dot with this warning as this continues, and we'll see if the National Weather Service has put in any extra information on their thoughts on the storm, and maybe they may expire this early later on, because these tend to be short-lived in these scenarios. At this point, this storm, again, it's just one of those situations where not a lot's going to be happening from most of the region. You'll only get 1 or 2 areas of spin out of this over the next 2 or 3 hours that we have the low pressure system over us. Once that low pressure moves off to the east, you'll be totally done with the severe weather threat for the rest of the day. Not done with the rain entirely, but yes, the severe weather threat will go down to 0. We'll take a view of just the rain here. We'll go one panel and just the rain, just to show you guys that things do shape up very nicely after we get past this severe weather threat. You look further off into Illinois, and that's all the rain that's coming to an end there. You see the dry slotting that's happening down in this area, and I'll circle it with my cursor here. This is the dry slotting action going on the western side of this area of low pressure. So the only spot of concern at this point, just some storms south of the parkways with one that is tornado warned, and this should not last too long for us here. We'll go back to the panel view where we have both radar and our base velocity up here. And you can see with the latest scan that came in, no tightening, no brightening of the colors. It's the same as the last one looked, so still no additional confidence that anything has been able to touch down at this point. We'll go back a couple of scans, see if there were, and I do not see any blips on our correlation coefficient. So it doesn't look like anything, again, has touched down. But this is a situation where we've got to stick with it. And we're required to do that for you guys, even if we're not confident that something's on the ground. There's no way that we can go away from a tornado warning like this when there is that low end chance that something could change at any point. So all eyes are on this, what's not necessarily a supercell, but it is an individual storm. So an individual storm that doesn't have much happening south of it. So there is enough of that flow coming in on the southern side to feed it. Nothing's impeding the storm's ability to grow and intensify necessarily, except for the fact that there's not much energy in the atmosphere. Without that energy, you're going to have a hard time actually getting this to the ground. Another thing that we've seen, and we've been looking at the soundings this morning, is that there's a bit of a temperature inversion. And when you've got that slight cap in the atmosphere near the surface, it's really hard for tornadoes to form. But as mentioned before, you've got winds that are moving pretty fast right around that area of low pressure. And when you have an area of low pressure, they're spinning counterclockwise rapidly. So you've got your directional change in the wind profile. You've got your speed change going up in the atmosphere. Those two things alone, they're the most important component of getting tornadoes, and that's why we have that possibility of a tornado here in Hart County, going to be moving into the northern half of Greene and far southeastern LaRue County as well. Let's take it full again with our radar, and we'll do some zooming in on some of the streets in that area, because folks may want to know, do I really have to take this seriously in Munfordville? Well, at this point, it's past Munfordville. You guys don't have to worry about it there. It's between Canmer and Pike View that this is going to be crossing over 31 East. And again, I think I mentioned earlier, Johnson Springs Road is an area that this is over right now. We go over to Howard Scott Road. Let's go east of 31 East, and Eve Highway is another spot where you'll want to pay attention to this. Knox's Creek Road. Those are some spots over the next few minutes. This is a slow mover. Over the next 5 to 10 minutes, those roads will have this area of rotation over them, and it's a good idea. If you were thinking about heading out the door to work early this morning, let's just sit for a few minutes and allow this to pass. I think the boss will understand if this is going to be impacting your region or your commute to work, hey, it's okay to just take a break, take some time. Let's sit at home for a little bit before you potentially run into what could be a tornado that touches down very briefly here in Hart County, central and eastern Hart County where this is. If you are west of 65 there in Hart County, you don't have to worry about this storm. We did see with the latest scan come in that those blues and reds are a little bit brighter in nature here. So not crazy, but they are brighter. The incoming winds sitting at 65 knots and the outbound, or incoming winds sitting at 51 and outbound winds sitting at 11. So 62 gate to gate here, which is sitting around 70 miles per hour. So that would be a low end EF0 tornado potential that we would have with this storm. And that's what it looks like at this point. Again, if you're in Canmer, you've got a postal address on the north side of Canmer, especially or south of Pikeview, you're going to want to make sure that you're in your safe place just in case this touches down. Let's go back to our correlation coefficient, and still no sign of anything on the ground. So this is still just radar indicated, but not confirmed. One of the things that the National Weather Service, and Mark was mentioning this yesterday, is saying that it's a very favorable environment for storms that line right up along the warm front. I mentioned this at the beginning of the newscast. If you're on or south of the warm front, you've got that potential for rotation and got that potential for severe weather. That's what they're saying right here, that the tornadic potential is only going to be along and just south of that warm front, which is exactly over Hart County right now. They noticed that the surface winds off the Hart County Mesonet site were southeast, so having those back surface winds likely enhancing the low-level shear as well. So they're thinking that the storm could go for a little bit longer than initially anticipated. The storm motion is going to parallel the front, so it just sits there along that front, and as it continues riding it, that front's going to give it that extra spin that it needs to keep things going. So we're waiting for another scan. Looks like another one is going to come in here in just a few minutes, and that'll give us a better indication of what's going on inside the storm here. But it has ingredients, just not all of them in play. One of the things that it's missing is that extra energy to get this to touch down. We'll go over to the wall, talk about the structure of the storm briefly here, because you'll notice with the latest scan that we have a little bit more of a hook action here. So the hook on the western side of 31 East here, here's your inflow notch, here's the rain wrapping around that, and of course, you can see behind me, over Canmer, this is our area of rotation. So those two things link up perfectly with each other for what we're looking for when it's a supercellular type of storm. But this, again, it's not necessarily a lone supercell like you would tend to see where there's absolutely nothing else happening around it. There is rain all up and down on the eastern side, southern side, western side. There's just no big storm system to the south to take up any of the little energy that it has to work with here. So again, Pikeview to Canmer. I know that this isn't a super populated area, but there are plenty of folks that do live down here. Lots of roads to talk about. Johnson Highway and Knox's Creek Road east of 31 East. Those are going to be the spots where you want to make sure that you're getting into your area or your safe place. You see this little icon that's come up. That's one of our indications that our GR analyst will show us that, yeah, there's some rotation going on here. A new scan will come in a few minutes, but you noticed with the blues that are directly along, that blue coloring on our velocity that's right along 31 East, that has gotten a little bit brighter. And while they're not necessarily tighter at this point, again, you've got the structure of the storm that we look for. You have some of the other components that we're, again, the colors that we're looking for on our velocities, talking about the winds and the spin that we have going on there. So with those two things together, I absolutely think that the tornado warning is warranted, even if it seems like this storm at this point is a little bit on the elevated side, because if it can break through that very small cap that we have in play near the surface, it'll put something down. It may not last forever, but the National Weather Service has already said that they think as long as this is able to ride along the warm front, there's no way that they can take the tornado warning off of this here. So we'll be with it for at least we've still got another 21 minutes to go with this tornado warning. And who knows at this point if they're going to be extending it further down the line. Let's go back to GR analysts, do a little bit of analyzing there, and we'll talk about the roads where now this is already past those that are along Johnson Springs Road. This tornado threat is past you guys at this point. If you're in Bowling Springs Road, this area of rotation is going to be heading right along and south of you all. Those that are in Eve Highway, another spot, we mentioned it earlier, where you're going to want to make sure that you're getting to your safe place, Knox's Creek Road as well. Let's go over into Greene County, some spots there that we need to mention here. Hudgens Highway, one location, John Golf Road. John Goff Road, you guys want to make sure that you're heading to your safe place. And another one would be Ira Wright Road. This is a slow mover. So yeah, I'm giving you guys that extra heads up here. It's about 10 minutes away from you all in Greene County, but you've definitely got that possibility of seeing some rotation move over your area. Now it's a little bit tighter and brighter with the latest scan that's come in as it's crossing over 31 East. So a little bit more confidence that tornado potential is there with the brighter blues, the darker reds next to each other. The inbound winds a little bit faster than our outbound on our velocity product here. So definitely got some strong flow into the storm and feeding it very, very well. It doesn't, if you were to look at the left-hand side of your screen at that reflectivity product, this isn't something, if we only had our reflectivity showing the shape of the storm and just the rain that's inside of it, this isn't something that would make most people scream, oh man, there's a tornado in here. That's why it's so important for us to have the velocity components that you see on the right-hand side of the screen to see what's really going on with the winds and how that rain inside the storm is moving. A little bit, again, Canmer to Pikeview, that's the spot that we've been calling out. That's the spot where the rotation is right now. And just a quick look at our correlation coefficient component here, you don't see anything that sticks out. For those that may not be used to seeing this product, I do want to say just very briefly that if you haven't seen this before on the right-hand side of your screen, all that maroon color means that everything in the air is the exact same size. That's why we call it correlation coefficient. How well do the items in the air correlate with the items that are next to it? And so while you've got heavier rain in some of these red and yellow and orange areas here, that's the super heavy rain inside the storm. And then you've got green, that's the lighter rain. All those raindrops are pretty much the same size. It's just how grouped together are they. And you can see that here, of course, you've got heavier rain, meaning there's a lot more of it going on. You look over to the right-hand side of your screen, it's just indicating that all of those raindrops are the exact same size. If we were to see something pop up east of 31 East, if we saw something pop up east of that in Hart County moving into Greene, and it's a little black or blue dot here, that's going to be where our rotation has made it from the cloud to the ground, has brought up some debris, and even with the latest scan that just came in, you saw that little green triangle move east. We don't see that little black or blue dot popping up here, so still not confident in anything on the ground. That's the good news that we can give here. What we do know is that we still have the shape of the storm, and I'll go back over to GR Analyst, and I'm going to bring up the velocity product again and see what new scan has come in there. We've still got the shape of the storm, we still got that rotation, and it still appears that most of it is fairly far above the ground, not quite getting down to the surface yet. That's why we haven't seen that correlation coefficient product come up for us and drop a tornado. So no confidence in a tornado yet. If one touches down, they're usually in this scenario going to be on the weaker side, not hang around for too long. But for folks that may get this, it's going to be those that are now in far northeastern Hart County and going into northern Greene County. If you're north of Summersville and Greensburg, you don't have to worry about this. I don't know if your sirens are going off down in that direction, but Summersville and Greensburg have absolutely no threat from this storm. There's absolutely nothing that you're going to have to worry about at this point. Taking a quick broader view of the entire scenario, I don't see anything else that sticks out whatsoever. There are no other areas of rotation, so everyone else is good this morning. You're waking up, you're looking at it, and you're like, I didn't think that we were going to have a severe weather threat today. Well, if you were listening to the forecast yesterday especially, we talked about a non-zero threat, meaning that it was super low, but it could happen. And at this point, we do have one tornado warning that goes until 6 o'clock. So we've got another 16.5 minutes on this thing as it crosses from Hart County into Greene County. And LaRue, you've been now taken out, and rightfully so, taken out of that warning. You'll notice here in southeastern LaRue, south of Buffalo, east of Magnolia, they cut out that box with that latest update on the warning, so you guys are no longer in this, and that's because there's just more confidence that this is on that trek through northern Greene, and eventually it's going to skirt Taylor County and may go back into LaRue County on the far eastern side, but I think that that's a very low chance that even we'd be able to do that. So the track of this was moving from Munfordville due northeast at 35 miles per hour. It's a slow-moving storm, so you've got lots of time if you're over in Greene County north of Summersville to get into your safe place. If you're right along the Greene and Hart County line, well, you've got a couple of minutes to get there. You'll probably notice the winds are picking up. That inflow with the winds on the eastern side and the blue here, that's where you're going to really start to feel things pick up. We just got a couple of new scans in. I'm going to go check over on GR Analyst to see if that latest scan has brought any confirmation of whether or not this is on the ground. At this point, we don't see it. That's a good sign for us. We want to get, if there is confirmation, we want to get that to you as fast as possible. But the last thing we actually want to see is a tornado on the ground this morning. Let's go back to talking about some roads that you may live along. And you may think, all right, well, how about this? You tell me that the storm's in eastern Hart County. What roads need to be taking shelter here? Etna Furnace Highway is one spot that should be taking shelter now. Hudgens Road, again, in far eastern Hart County and into western Greene County, that's going to turn into John Goff Road. You guys there are going to want to make sure that you're in your safe place. Another one in Greene County would be Gum Spring Road, and we'll go up to Durrett Road as well. That's going to be an area where you'll want to take your safety precautions. Hodgenville Road, north of Summersville, you guys too, I think it's a good idea for you to start thinking about, all right, do I need to get into my innermost room, or should I go ahead and head to work this morning? I'm an early riser. Nah, you know what? Stay at home for a little bit. Let's ride this thing out, because the last thing you want to do is be on the road and get caught up even in a weak tornado and spin the car around. That severe thunderstorm warning has expired. We don't really have a straight line wind threat out of this. Definitely don't have a hail threat out of this whatsoever. It is solely the rotation within the storm that we're keeping an eye on as it's coming out of Hart County and into northern Greene County. For the next 14 minutes, we have this tornado warning here for those two of our southernmost counties. For those that may just now be waking up, we've got a tornado warning in effect. This storm is moving at 35 miles per hour, and it is only for two of our southern counties, Hart and Greene. And it is not going to be one of those scenarios that we have a long track, strong tornado. I know we just had that with Somerset, London. Folks still have that fresh on their mind. This is one of those that if it touches down, it's usually going to be weaker and briefer in nature. It doesn't stick around for a really long time. Although it is a slow mover, it's just one of those, when we're looking at the radar presentation that we have here and the severe weather components that we know we have in play, it's usually going to be one of those weak, EF0 or EF1 type of tornadoes that can be impactful. Those that are in mobile homes, you got trees in your yard, don't be surprised if there's some tree branches that are down over your yard early this morning, or maybe some of the area roadways. Even after this passes by, if you live in eastern Hart County, especially the northeastern portion, or you live in northwestern Greene County, keep that in mind as you're out on the roads early this morning and thinking to yourself, you know what, everything's good, the storm's passed. Well, roads are still wet, and tree limbs could be on them, and last thing you want to do is run into one of those, especially if you're getting up here right before sunrise. So let's go back to GR Analyst. We'll take an overall broad view of this. You can still see the storm doesn't have that crazy supercell structure with it. This is one of those very unique scenarios where it's along the warm front close to the center of low pressure. Those two things can cause tornadoes to happen even when you don't have a lot of energy. A line of storms that stretches from all along US 31 East, down east of Munfordville, down toward Glasgow. There's not a lot of no rotation within that line of storms, but you go to this one cell that's north of it, that's where you have your area of rotation. So if you're west of US 31 East, west of it, meaning Horse Cave, Munfordville, Bonnieville, and everybody west of the 65 corridor there in Hart County, you don't have to worry about this rotation. It's now moving out of Hart County and into northern Greene. It's going to cross over Hodgenville Road in about 10 minutes. It's a slow mover going only 35 miles per hour, so less than 10 minutes, I would say, for those that are along Hodgenville Road and east of it for this to be moving up into your area. Pike View now, we mentioned and called out Pike View and Canmer multiple times. You guys no longer have a tornado threat in Pike View proper, or Canmer proper, but maybe there are still east of Pike View, maybe there's still some locations that have Pike View addresses. So if you're east of Pike View, you've got an area of rotation over you right now, and specifically those that are on Hudgens Road, you guys have that rotation right over you. It has tightened up just a touch now that it's on the Hart and Greene County line, but some of those blue values have come down a little bit. We'll go back to correlation coefficient just to double check the last few scans, see if anything has touched down, and at this point it does not look like it. So we always like to give a little bit of good news here at WDRB when it comes to a scenario like this. That's our good news, is that it doesn't look like anything has touched down. But it's a very obvious area of rotation that is probably a little elevated. We're looking roughly 3,000 feet in the air here. That's pretty high off the ground. 3,000 feet in the air with an area of rotation doesn't mean that for certain the storm has come all the way to the ground. It's a very low likelihood that we're actually able to get this thing through the cap that we have in the atmosphere down to the surface. That cap can erode sometimes when you add in extra fuel and extra moisture and extra warmth especially, and we still have warm temperatures down in that direction, but it's just not a scenario that screams, I'm a tornado on the ground right now, I'm causing damage. This is one of those that it's a watch and wait type of game. We sit here with a warning for 30 to 40 minutes, we cover it the entire time, and it may never actually make it all the way to the ground. I would definitely have more urgency in my voice if I thought that this is touching down, causing damage at this point, and telling more folks to take this as serious as possible, getting into your safe place. At this point, the best advice that I can give you, just hold off on going to work for a little bit here, especially if you're over in northern Greene County. You're in Hart County now that it's crossing the border into Greene. You're good to go to work. I would say, again, just take it slow on the roads. They're wet. You could have some tree limbs out there that were knocked down by some very gusty winds that are going to be under this area of rotation. Even if it's not touching the ground, you've still got winds fueling into the storm that are coming from the south and southeast. Those backing winds that we mentioned earlier that the National Weather Service was talking about. So in that scenario, you could still have some tree limbs that fall even if a tornado doesn't touch down. Again, just something to keep in mind this morning. I think that this area of rotation with the next scan will be entirely in Greene County at this point. So Hart County folks, if you are, again, along and west of 31 East, you're good to go this morning. You don't have to worry about a severe weather threat. In fact, it's over entirely for you all. The closer and closer that area of low pressure gets to you, the faster that severe weather threat comes to an end. We'll go back to GR Analysts. We'll talk about more when it comes to the structure of this storm. It does look like the line of storms to the south are catching up pretty good, and that may be able to cut off the actual feed into the storm, the energy that's being fed into it. With that broader view that we're looking at right now, this truly is the sole area of rotation and only area of concern along anywhere within this entire storm system. This is the only one. We knew yesterday when we were talking about this, especially Mark and Rick in the evening, that it would be a very isolated incident, isolated warning if anything happens. And you know, guys, the best thing I can say now is that it's moving into Greene County. It has weakened significantly. You'll notice on the eastern side of the storm system, and we'll bring it back up here at the Weather Center, the eastern side of the storm system where we had those super bright blues right here, that has gone away entirely. So we're talking about speed and directional shear, winds that are twisting a lot and winds that are moving really fast higher in the atmosphere. Now that this is not in quite as favorable of a scenario, the winds aren't moving super fast on the eastern side of the storm. Not as much fueling into the storm at this point. There's still some directional shear, but not a ton. You don't have them, oftentimes when you're looking for rotation, you're looking for them, that green and that blue going into the red on the northern side and the red coming out on the southern side. And you really don't see that here. They're just kind of butting up next to each other. When they're next to each other, we watch and we anticipate the potential for rotation. But I wouldn't call this significant rotation within this storm, not even at the elevated levels right now. If it's not going to have significant rotation at the elevated levels, it's not going to have rotation at the ground either. So this is probably going to end up, hopefully, as one of those warnings that we cover for 30 to 40 minutes and nothing ever touches down. We've still got another 6.5 minutes left on this warning. We'll stick with it until it expires, but I haven't seen the National Weather Service say anything about extending this. And in fact, what we just talked about, and I'll zoom out here briefly, you guys can stay on it, but what we talked about on the southern side of the storm, when we said that here's your cell up here, this was the cell that is still tornado warned, but on the southern side we have this line that's catching up to it. National Weather Service just said exactly what I told you guys, that now that the main line to the south is catching up, it may end up, in their words, squashing the lead supercell. So they're holding off on any sort of downstream warning. They don't anticipate making one for the rest of Greene County up into LaRue and Taylor over here. And again, with that latest scan as it's crossing over Hodgenville Road, looking a lot more favorable for us down in that direction. So I don't anticipate that anything is, I don't think anything is touched down. I don't anticipate this re-strengthening. Now what little fuel it was able to get when it was unimpeded by anything to the south is now starting to be taken up by this extra line down here. So that extra line of storms is a saving grace for folks further north that were underneath or going to be underneath this area of rotation. We still got 5 more minutes on the warning. Stick with me for 5 more minutes here. We'll get back to news. We'll see Jude. We'll see Keith having so much fun out there at Holiday World. Dalton as well from yesterday. Man, their videos are hilarious, and you'll want to stick around for that. But for the next 5 minutes, just hang out with me as this area of rotation is crossing over Hodgenville Road. We're going to be good this morning. We're going to get through this just fine. If you have some pictures and video of this storm as it was moving through eastern Hart County, along or east of Munfordville, east of 31 East especially, that's going to be a spot that there may have been some decent rotation down in that direction that possibly put down a brief tornado, but we have absolutely no confirmation of that from any of our radar products. National Weather Service hasn't indicated that either. If it happened, it didn't last long, most likely, because we just haven't seen any debris signatures show up on our weather system. So we'll go back to GR Analyst. We'll talk about the folks that are in northern Greene County as this storm is moving out of the warned area within the next probably 5 minutes or so, and the warning ends in 4 minutes. So I think that this warning was perfectly placed. Those that are going to be along Ward Road, east of Hodgenville Road, those that are on, let's say, Union Church Road as well in far northern Greene County. And a new severe thunderstorm warning has come out here. And the reason that they're doing this is because there's still some potential for rotation, but unlikely to get it. Let me show you guys the bottom of this here. Okay, yeah, so it's a 60-mile-per-hour wind gust possible, and still moving northeast at 35 miles per hour. So nothing has changed with this, and they've left the tornado possible tag on there. Oftentimes, when you see a severe thunderstorm warning that looks like this box here, this one in particular, after it's just come out of a tornado warned area, that they put it like this because that is the shape of a typical tornado warning as well. So most of your severe thunderstorm warnings, if it's a long line of storms, are going to be more north to south. But when you have an extended east-west scenario, it's either for very large hail or it's going to be for potential rotation within a tornadic supercell. So at this point, the supercell has become one with the line, and that's why there is significantly decreased confidence that this is going to be able to put down a tornado anytime soon. You look at not just the reflectivity, the shape of the storm, the rain, you look at the velocity, the winds that are happening inside of it. Notice this bowing segment here, so definitely some gusty winds at bare minimum, which is why there's still the 60-mile-per-hour tag on it. But you have just right next to each other, the red and the green, they're butting up next to each other. Doesn't look like they're feeding into each other yet. That latest scan that came in does show some stronger outbound winds from the storm. So that's why they still have to, it warrants that tornado possible tag on that severe thunderstorm warning that they just put out, which does include far eastern LaRue County, those that are in Marion as well, Taylor County, just the far northwestern portion of it. You're in Campbellsville in Taylor County, you don't have to worry about this. You're over in Bradfordsville, you're not going to have to worry about this one over there in Marion either. Lebanon, well, it'll eventually head up in your direction because this is northeast. I think it'll probably stay south of Springfield, though, a little further north in Washington. So there's still some spots that are going to have a heads up, and we'll be here in the studio on this severe thunderstorm warned storm the entire time. We'll be with it, we'll be watching it from behind the scenes, but soon enough we're going to send it back out to Jude in the field to do his weather out there from Holiday World, where things are starting to shape up a lot nicer for them. One more look at GR Analyst. We'll go to the one panel and we'll show you guys the overall view of the storm. They did just cancel that tornado warning. If they put something out, it will no longer include Hart County, and it would just be northern Greene County, Taylor, and up into Marion and parts of LaRue as well. So again, still a potential threat out there. It's just not the same as it looked about 15 minutes ago. Here's that overall view that I was talking about, and we'll bring you back to the Weather Center one more time. When you're looking at a storm system like this, the area of low pressure is over far southern, south central Kentucky here. And with that area of low pressure, you've got just enough spin on the eastern side to maybe spark something off. This was our supercell. It's no longer just a cell. It's all one with this line of storms. So at this point, these storms are starting to eat into the energy that would have gone directly into that storm, what little there was to work with there. You're west of that storm, your severe weather threat is now 0 for the rest of the day. You're west of the 65 corridor, your severe weather threat is 0. If you're north of the parkways heading up from E-Town to Lexington, I don't think you have a severe weather threat whatsoever. Never really did this morning. But if you're south of the parkways and over towards 75, that's where we still have the potential as the swarm front moves north for a individual cell to maybe latch onto it, get some quick spin, and potentially drop down a tornado. No guarantee of that at this point. It's 6 o'clock. That tornado warning has since expired. That's about all that we could do with this storm, but we're keeping a very close eye on it in case it does ramp back up. That threat is low, but it is not 0. We'll be back after this.
Morning, he's been detailing some of the severe weather to our south.
Yeah.
Things up here, though, around the metro, quieter. I mean, we've got the rain, but not as stormy.
We don't have the severe weather scenario. If you're north of the parkways, you don't have to worry about this morning. I don't want you to tune out entirely because we still got a lot of important stuff to talk about weather-wise, but severe weather threat north of the parkways, 0. You're good to go. You're south of the parkways, well, you've got some severe weather ingredients. In fact, with the latest scan that just came in, we had that tornado warning that we talked about for the past 40 minutes. We've got a severe thunderstorm warning that has tornado possible on it. They haven't reissued a tornado warning, but the rotation has picked back up. The reason for that, it's still attached to the swarm front that's slowly lifting north of our area, or through our area. And again, most of us won't be impacted by any severe weather potential. It's a very isolated threat here. It's south of the parkways. It's crossing. It's already past those that are on Hodgenville Road. It's past you guys to the east, now heading up towards South 210 here, coming out of LaRue County and heading down toward Campbellsville. So Campbellsville Road there in Taylor County, and they just put a new tornado warning on it. So once again, we are going to talk about a storm that is unlikely to actually drop a tornado, but it's one of those scenarios, and you just heard me say it over the last 40 40 minutes where you just can't say it won't happen. It was unlikely to see things ramp back up because these storms to the south caught back up to this one. But we still have the exact same ingredients at play here. So we're going to stick with this tornado warning that they just issued. And this is going to be, let me double check it here for you guys. This is going to be for the next, again, another 30-minute warning here. Goes until 6:30 this morning. So it's the same thing as what we just talked about with the last one. You've got some rotation here on Campbellsville Road, South 210 here, coming out of LaRue County into Taylor County. You see that little green icon, meaning that we've got a mesocyclone in there. You can see the blue and the green very close to each other, but this is about 2,800 feet off the ground. This is why we're not solidly confident that something is touching down, because the area that it's in, when our radar beam is looking into this, 2,800 feet off the ground to see this type of rotation. If it were closer to the radar beam, we're talking 500 feet, maybe 1,000. We'd have more confidence that this is probably going to touch down soon. But it's just not one of those scenarios where we're super confident it's happening, but we know that we've got to watch. We can't just say, some rotation up 3,000 feet off the ground. Who cares about that? If the radar beam's not able to analyze the rest of the atmospheric column all the way down to the surface, you got to take what you can get with that lowest level of the atmosphere that it is watching. So 35-mile-per-hour trek here toward Lebanon. You guys are going to be included in this tornado warning now up there in Washington, or in Marion County. It does touch parts, the warning does touch parts of Greene County, but you guys don't have a tornado threat. It's already safely out of Greene, crossing over South 210, right along the LaRue-Taylor County border here is where we've got that area of rotation. You look at this is just a mess on our reflectivity, which is looking at the shape of the storm, looking at the rain that's inside the storm. This doesn't look like your typical supercell, but it was at one point. Briefly, well, it was an individual storm on its own. Then these storms caught up to it on the southern side, killed the flow, the inflow, which is our feed into the storm to keep it alive, that goes in the updraft, causes all the spin and the extra juice for it. That killed it briefly, and now it's starting to fall apart, those storms on the southern side, so it's starting to isolate itself again. As long as it can get somewhere by itself, and it's got those fast-moving winds on the eastern side of the area of low pressure, it's attached to that warm front. Those are components that we always look for when we're talking about an isolated low-wind tornado threat. That's exactly what's happening right now. National Weather Service has got a little bit more information in here, just about, let's see, the movement of the storm. Yeah, it's still 35 miles per hour. Goes until 6:30 a.m. Eastern time, and I believe that we're fully in Eastern time zone down there at this point. No extra feed from them, but it's just the same scenario as what we talked about last half hour. You've just got this warm front that is passing through our area, and as it does so, with that low so close to us, you're never able to rule out entirely if a tornado can happen or not. So this warning stretches from northern Greene County, and you'll be chopped out of it here soon. You're not under a threat of a tornado in Greene County. From northern Greene, northwestern Taylor County, and far eastern LaRue up through Marion toward Lebanon, that's where this area of rotation is heading toward. Latest scan has just come in for those that are in Maple or on Maple Road in Taylor County, those that are Hedgepeth Road, and you see that new warning just came out, took out Greene County and much of LaRue as well, just as we mentioned it would. Those that are on Scott Ridge Road over in Marion, those are some spots where over the next 5 to 10 minutes, you want to go down to your safe place because we've got potential for some rotation in those spots. This will most likely stay just south of Raywick proper, definitely south of Loretto over in Marion, and maybe make its way north of Lebanon, south of Springfield later on, but that's a long time down the road. And the reason I say that is because it's such a slow mover. It's a 35-mile-per-hour trajectory here. It's a slow moving storm. For those in Maple Road and those that are in Social Band Road, the rotation is moving over you right now. You're probably hearing the winds pick up. You may not be seeing anything happening out there. Of course, it's kind of dark. I mean, the sun rises here soon. It's kind of dark out there. You've got it, if anything, it's going to be rain wrapped. There's rain all around the storm. If you were only to look at one product here, and I'll take it to just one, I'll do that for you guys. So we do a quick social experiment on Social Band Road. This does not. When you look at a storm like this does not scream, I'm a tornado producing storm. That's why it is absolutely crucial for us to have more than just one radar component. And we put in the not just reflectivity on the left-hand side, but the velocity on the right-hand side. Those two things together are going to help show us what's going on with the storm's rotation and the storm's structure. Then you add in our correlation coefficient you see on the left-hand side of the screen, and that tells us whether or not a tornado is on the ground. Nothing in the scan right now says anything about a tornado. Last couple of scans, there may have been very brief, nope, not even with that scan. Absolutely nothing in any of these scans tells us that there's a tornado on the ground. All of this is uniform rain, and that's all it is in the air at this point. So when you see that maroon color across your entire screen, you know that all that you're seeing are raindrops in the air. If we were to see some green colors and some blues and especially some blacks, that would be some debris that we would have lofted in the air. So my cursor is over that area of rotation that is directly along the LaRue-Taylor County border, heading up into Marion soon. It'll be western Marion County, south of Raywick, that we've got this area of rotation now. Raywick, you are included in the tornado warning, and rightfully so. Those that have addresses in southern Raywick, eastern Raywick, you'll potentially be impacted by this storm. It'll stay to the northwest of Jessetown, Calvary, Lebanon. Here's some spots that are inside of this tornado warning. For the next, we've got another 19 minutes on it. But, you know, again, it's going to be not necessarily Calvary proper. It'll be those that are west of you all, especially west of US 68 there. Latest scan just came in. Again, it's falling apart. There was a brief uptick in the mid-levels, around 3,000 feet, so about a half mile off the ground, that we saw that rotation start back up. But we don't just need rotation a half mile off the ground. It's got to get all the way to the surface, obviously, for that to be a tornado. And our radar beam only goes up out in that direction about 2,500 to 3,000 feet. And so when you're a half mile off the ground and you've got rotation like that, a warning is warranted. It is. But now that we've got rotation like this, it's much less likely for us to actually be seeing a tornado out there. Yes, you still have some reds and greens next to each other, and my cursor's right on it here in northwestern Taylor County. But this, again, not a scenario that screams, I'm for sure a tornado that's on the ground right now. When we were looking at our correlation coefficient, that debris signature just was not there. And again, you look at this side of your screen, the reflectivity here, the rain inside the storm, you're not seeing that typical structure that we're looking for. This would be, if anything, an embedded rain-wrapped tornado that's usually brief in nature, but these ones I've seen often be a little bit wider as well. So, you know, I'm not going to give it an exact size, but when you have a scenario like this, it's usually broad rotation and part of it makes it to the ground. It's usually an EF0 or EF1, but it can be kind of wide, and it'll knock down a lot of trees, cause some problems on the roads for those that are heading out early this morning. If you're in, we were talking about Hart and Greene County earlier when there were tornado warnings there. You don't have a tornado warning anymore, but you may have some impacts on the roads, not just the rain making it slick, but potentially some trees and some broken limbs and things like that on the roadways. So keep that in mind as you're heading out this morning. If you're underneath this tornado warning, let's give it some time. Let's hold off on going to work for a little bit. You may be worried about being late. Shoot a text or an email to the boss and say, hey, I'm watching WDRB right now. We've got a tornado warning out there. I'm not comfortable going into work. With the latest scan that's come in, I am highly confident that we do not have the rotation that warrants a tornado warning any longer. National Weather Service had said about 5 minutes ago that there's a pretty convincing velocity signature along that boundary. That's why they went ahead with the tornado warning. That was 5 minutes ago. What we have right now is not a convincing tornado signature or velocity signature any longer. So I'm highly confident that we no longer have that same rotation within the storm to produce a tornado. Even not just looking at the right-hand side of the screen, but the left-hand side. Now you see that the things have tamed down very, very significantly. You had this small band of storms to the south of what was a cell on its own. Those moved through. They cut off the feed of energy, moisture, and the warmth into the storm. And so they're eating up what should be keeping this thing alive. And so it cuts off that flow into the storm, cuts off the updraft. With no updraft, you're not going to feed that storm and get it to continually spin. So that's why with the latest scan that just came in on the right-hand side of your screen, we're looking a lot better when it comes to rotation, meaning there's a lack of it at this point. Let's go to GR Analyst, and we'll take that full for you guys. We'll look at the broad view just to show everybody, as I did with the last tornado warning, that this is the only area of concern whatsoever. There is absolutely nothing else out there that sticks out to us and says, hey, I'm a potential tornado producing storm. I've got large hail. I've got gusty winds of 60 miles per hour. Nothing of that sort. In fact, the highest winds of any of the rest of these storms are probably sitting at about 40 miles per hour, well below severe criteria. We'll have another scan in about a minute to maybe two as this, and there you go, there's the new tornado warning that's come in and now has taken out LaRue County and Taylor County entirely. It still includes part of Lebanon. Calvary, you're now outside of this, and this is going to be just to the southeast of Raywick. Again, I can't stress enough, and we're going to have to go to another velocity product here. We'll use storm relative, and even that does not show us any rotation within the storm. Yeah, that rotation has come down significantly. So I'm highly confident that there's not rotation in this storm that still warrants a warning. I'm not surprised that they've left it up and they've just adjusted it, because we mentioned about 15, 20 minutes ago that they weren't going to put down a downstream warning with this because the rotation had gone down. But it could come back up as long as that boundary's still there, which it is. And the rotation came back up. They've reissued another warning. They put it out there for another 30 minutes, just like with the first one. It goes until 6:30, so we've still got 14 minutes on this. However, this looks nothing like what they reissued that warning for initially 15 minutes ago. We'll pull back GR Analyst again. Let me show you why they reissued this storm. Stick with me here, because we're going to go back in time about 15 to 20 minutes. You see, as that storm came out of Greene County and into northwestern Taylor County just before it crossed over 210 in Taylor County, or as some would call it, Campbellsville Highway, or Hodgenville Road, excuse me. Just as it was getting ready to cross that, they reissued that warning, and you'll see one more scan here down the line, because you've got those bright blues and that red very close to each other. There was rotation there. It lasted two scans. The third and fourth, now fifth one have come in, and that rotation is entirely depleted. So I'm feeling good for those that are in Marion County. You don't necessarily have to be in your safe place with this storm. They've now chopped back that severe thunderstorm warning as well. The sole reason that they had the severe thunderstorm warning out was 60 mile per hour winds possible, but that would be associated with the tornado possible in this particular storm. So our system, or our line of storms to the south, that stretches from south of Lebanon all the way down to Campbellsville, down past Greensburg as well, past Nifley. It's getting ready to head into your all's area. That line is now eating up what's left of the energy that goes into this tornado warned portion of really what's a shower at this point. We don't even have a lot of lightning with this one. I was looking at some other products. There's not a ton going on lightning wise. And when you see an increase and an uptick in lightning, you usually are very confident that the storm has a stronger updraft and that it's strengthening. But with a lack of real lightning down in that direction, we don't have a ton of confidence that this is going to continue increasing in its strength and its intensity. What we do know at this point, and you look at the right-hand side of the screen, you've still got some inbound winds, but the outbound coming again out of the storm on the western side of it, very weak, very weak. So you can't just have winds going into a storm to create a tornado. You got to feed out as well. You have to have spin, and it weakens significantly. If anything, with that last scan that just came in, my cursor's still on the area of rotation. Raywick, it'll be just southeast of you guys here. So Raywick folks on the southeastern side of the city, let's make sure again that you're just watching. Stay inside. Don't go out on the roads just yet. Don't head out to work just yet. Give it about 10 minutes and it'll be outside of your area. This is solely for Marion County now. It's not yet up to Washington. It's out of Taylor. It's out of LaRue, well outside of Hart and Greene, where it initially started almost an hour ago at this point. But that little area of rotation that's right along the station or the warm front, as long as it's there and it's got that front to latch onto, rotation can pop back up at any time. So last 2 or 3 scans, confidence was super low that a tornado was within this storm. This current scan, still very low that there's anything being produced by the storm. Give it 2 or 3 more scans. You may see things pick back up here. That is a possibility. So at this point, nothing has changed over the last 5 minutes that we've been talking about this storm. Absolutely nothing. The components, what this storm has to work with, nothing's changed, nothing more favorable, nothing lacking at this point, or at least not any more than it already was. If we didn't have these storms down here, I would say that there's a better chance that this is going to be able to produce a tornado. But without these down here, or with those down there, it really does take quite a bit of a hit to that storm. They're probably going to cancel the tornado warning soon. They're waiting for one more scan here, and that may be the one that they were waiting for, but I think that they've got one more in them. The National Weather Service is just, they're being cautious, and for good reason, because we knew that the tornado threat this morning was going to be very low, very isolated. They gave us a 2% chance from the Storm Prediction Center, and Mark and Rick really hit on this last night, that it was only for our far southern counties. Those that are south of Bardstown, Springfield, Willisburg, those are the spots that have the best chance for this. You go further off and it'll eventually be outside of our area. Give it about probably 45 minutes to maybe an hour tops. This storm will be something that we don't have to worry about. And I think that this will be the only storm that we have any worry with the entire morning long. An isolated severe weather scenario is exactly what we're dealing with right now. And this may not even end up producing anything. We talked about it for about 40 minutes with the first warning. We've already talked about this one for 20 minutes here. It may be canceled soon, within the next couple of minutes, once we get one more scan in, but we got to see what that latest scan says. But you could talk about this type of storm and have it tornado warned for an hour, 2 hours, and nothing ever touched down. And the last thing we want folks to say is, well, you know what? That storm was tornado warned for 2 hours and it didn't touch down, so the next one isn't going to produce anything the next time we have severe weather. That's just not how it works. This, as said, so far, as I've said many times this morning, this is one of those scenarios where it's a usually quick, usually brief, usually weak tornado that touches down, and they still have to have a warning on it for the entire time that it has any rotation. There's still, it's close, but I'm not confident that there is significant rotation within this storm. It's very, very mild, and it's very high off the ground. In fact, I'll go over to GR Analyst. We'll find out exactly how high off the ground this is. I'm willing to bet that it's probably 2,500 or so feet, 28, almost 2,900 feet off the ground as it's heading to the southeast of Raywick. So it's moving right now. Raywick Road, Sally Ray Pike Road, St. Joseph Road is where it's over. Where is it headed? It's going to Frogtown Road, St. Mary's Road, and Loretto Road, west of Lebanon. And that'll be over the next 5 to 10 minutes or so that it'll hit some of those places, St. Mary's Road, Loretto Road. Those spots will have this area of rotation, very weak rotation, but it exists, very weak. It'll be over those spots within the next 5 to 10 minutes. So this is solely a tornado warning that goes until 6:30, so 7 more minutes on it for Marion County, and that's it. Nobody else included in this warning. It was a tornado warned cell that started all the way over in Hart County. And if we bring it back here, just so I can show the overall view. All the way over in Hart County is where this started, and it was a cell all on its own, had nothing to the south. Unimpeded flow into that storm, kept it strong and kept it lasting for a while from Hart through Greene. It died off right along the Greene and Taylor County line and then picked back up here over the last 30 minutes. And now the area of rotation, it's broad, it's weak. We look for bright and tight, not broad and weak. So bright and tight means that we're confident that a tornado is going to make its way to the ground. And even with that last scan that came in, no big change in its radar presentation. So no change in my confidence that nothing's happening with that storm in particular. We talked about south of the parkways as that best chance for a tornado threat, what minimal chance there is. North of the parkways, this is all stratiform rain. Everything's elevated to capped. We don't have enough energy to work with up in that direction. We have minimal energy to work with in the southern half of our area. That was our big limiting factor today. We had the shear with that area of low pressure. We had directional and speed shear. Winds are moving fast, higher in the atmosphere, and they're turning. That's why we knew that there was a threat for tornadoes with that alone. Then you add in the warm front that's stretching from basically Marion County all the way past the 75 corridor. With that warm front for things to latch on to, it adds on storm relative helicity. So with that in there, you get those things, that energy, this storm, as the energy starts to come up when you're right along and south of that boundary. And it latches onto something that it can ride along for a long time. And that's exactly actually the same thing that happened with that cell that started out when we were talking about the severe weather with the Somerset and London tornado. It latched onto a boundary and rode it all the way across Kentucky, and it was able to stay long lasting that day. This is not the same scenario. Yes, it has something to latch onto and maintain its lifespan. No, it doesn't have the rest of the severe weather ingredients to create something strong here. Just to, I know I brought up a tornado that happened in the past, but just to tell you guys, it's just not the exact same scenario. So this morning, I know you're waking up. Folks are turning on the TV and they're like, man, what is going on there? I cannot believe that there's a tornado warning out. It's one of those very low risk days, but it's a non-zero risk, and we have to talk about these things when you have that little bit of rotation. It has gone away a lot. We'll see if the National Weather Service gives us an extra warning. Okay, the latest thing that they've said is that they don't feel comfortable expiring the warning early. They're getting some enhancements, even though it's running into a more stable environment. So they're gonna let it play out. Again, they're not going with a downstream warning at this time. Could they eventually end up issuing another one for another quick, brief pickup in intensity? Yeah, it's possible. Do I think they will? Not at this point. There's just nothing that tells us that they've got that necessary need to do so. It will be outside of our area, closer to Danville, and eventually, I mean, this portion would head up closer to Lexington as well. But it's going to give us another 30-minute ride here this morning as it goes through Washington and Marion counties, and then after that point, it'll be over toward Anderson. It'll be out of here. We don't have to worry about it any longer. So give it 30 minutes, that storm will be out of here. Give it 3 minutes, the warning will expire. All that we have is this one warning. Everything else, nothing. Tame. Absolutely no rotation within the rest of these storms. The winds that are coming out of these storms, maybe 30 to 40 miles per hour at the most. There's just not a lot going on with what we have because we have that lack of energy in the atmosphere. So 2.5 more minutes on this tornado warning, and we'll get it right back to our regular newscast. We'll get it back to Jude out there in the field. We had a fun-packed morning for you guys with Holiday World activities. We've been looking forward to this for a long time. But the whole reason that I'm here in studio is because Jude's out there having fun. Someone's got to be back here monitoring this storm situation. And if we didn't have this planned already, Jude would be in here keeping you guys safe as well. So team effort this morning, just here in case anything happens. So far, with all the scans that we've seen, when we're looking at debris signatures and things like that, nothing has come up when it says to tell us that we've had a tornado that's touched down this morning. So very tame. We'll go back to GR analyst here and take a closer look into the storm. Yep. Nothing's changed. Everything's the same. Heading up towards Springfield, past Lebanon here soon. Lebanon is included in this warning that they just let expire 1.5 minutes early. What a favor that they did for us. We'll send it to commercial break in just a minute here. But I want to take one more look around this storm. And again, I just don't see anything that says that screams tornado at this point. That's why they allowed that warning to expire. And again, guys, for this morning, we may have to do one more cut in later. But let me just hit this nail on the head to beat a dead horse. Your threat is low. The potential for tornadoes exists only south of the parkway, south and east, and it's already well east of the 65 corridor heading toward I-75. We've only got 2 counties, I believe, for the rest of the morning that have any sort of threat of tornadoes, and that's going to be Marion County, north of Lebanon towards Springfield, and then Washington County, south of Willisburg, east of Willisburg. This is the portion of the line of storms that we're looking at from Springfield to Lebanon. You see it right here. There's just a little bit of turn with it, but not a whole lot. It's one of those non-zero threats, guys, okay? We'll keep an eye on it this morning. For now, we're going to send it to commercial break. We'll be back in a few minutes. We're going to have more fun this morning. Once we get this southeastern portion of the line of storms out of here, we're done with that severe weather threat. 30 minutes from now, you can take that to the bank. We'll be back in just a minute.
WDRB weather, sponsored by Big O Tires.
All right, new severe thunderstorm warning. You see it rolling across the bottom of your screen. This is for potentially 60-mile-per-hour winds, no hail, but really it's the tornado threat. It's the same cell that was tornado warned twice this morning, started in Hart County, moved all the way through Greene, Taylor, part of LaRue, and now is in Marion County heading, or actually it's just come out of Marion County, going through Washington as well. I said that we would have about 20 minutes to maybe 30 left with this storm and any tornado potential. That's exactly what we have. After 7 o'clock, this thing is out of Washington County. We don't have to worry about it in our viewing area anymore, okay? I promise you that. This specific storm, and there shouldn't be any others that produce any sort of severe weather for the rest of the day. But there is this area of rotation along 150 and Deep Creek Road over in far southeastern Washington County. Deep Creek Road and in US 150 heading toward Perryville. That's where we have rotation. You can see the green and the red, the pinks very close to each other. This happens when you've got an area of low pressure and a stationary boundary, and you've got just enough fuel leading up to it where you can get something to pop off very quickly, but it doesn't usually last long, and it's usually very, very weak. So yeah, they just put out a new tornado warning for that. So we'll go back to where we were at. That tornado warning will pop up here any second now on our GR analyst. And I mentioned, and again, it's along US 150 to Deep Creek Road. There's not a whole lot going on down here population-wise. It's south of Mackville and well to the east of Springfield. So that red box will pop up here any second now. A tornado warning that is very likely going to extend until I think 7:20 or 7:30 most likely. But for us in Washington County, for our coverage area, give it 7, 8, maybe 10 minutes at the most, and that tornado warning will expire. So you can see it down here, the tornado warning for Washington County, but you don't see it popping up in our system just yet here. Let me go see what the National Weather Service is saying about this storm. They're very likely going to be telling us that, hey, it's because it's right along that boundary and it's latched onto it again, and so now we've got this rotation picking up. This time around, I would say that this actually looks a little bit more favorable to actually produce something compared to the last few scans that we had looked at with the last couple of tornado warnings. Here we go. Let me bring this up for you. The tornado warning goes until 7:15, so even shorter than I anticipated. It's radar indicated. They don't say confirmed. Let me see if there's anything on the ground. Definitely not. We'll go back a scan or two. Nope, we're good to go there. So at this point, it's another one of those elevated, most likely elevated areas of rotation that are, This now, instead of just 2,500 feet off the ground, this is 37 feet up in the air. So while it is that, as I've said many times so far this morning, you can't just have rotation 3,700 feet up in the air and say, hey, there's a tornado on the ground. We've got to look at a bunch of different components with our radar scans here and say, hey, I see the structure of the storm, I see the rotation in the storm, and I see a debris signature, and that's how I know that there's tornado on the ground. But when you've got a rotation 3,700 feet up off the ground, that doesn't give extreme confidence that a tornado is actually going to touch down soon. So we've had some ingredients that are in favor of creating tornadoes. We've had a lot of ingredients that are working against it. And the only favorable location for any sort of severe weather activity is genuinely just this one storm. It is the only one in the entire viewing area to worry about. I know folks are waking up and they're going, I've seen it in the comment sections. What about Bullitt County? What about Jefferson County? What about up near Seymour, Indiana? You don't have to worry about it in those other areas. Washington County is the sole spot that is any sort of severe weather threat here. Yes, you do see part of Marion County, the far northeastern corner of it, included in this tornado warning. It's just how they drew it up. But the only area of rotation is now north of US 150 heading toward Deep Creek Road in far, far, far eastern Washington County. And that is our only spot of severe weather potential here. That latest scan came in. the pinks are a little bit brighter. In fact, there's a little bit of orange that I see in there. I'm going to go back to our GR analyst and zoom in on it a little bit further, and we're going to see what other roads that we may have down in that area. And again, this is okay. So this is one of those scenarios, as I've just mentioned. I felt a little bit more wary about this one because just the signature that it had looked like it would be more primed to produce a tornado. And at this point, with that green or bright blue and the orange next to each other, a little more confident that there's potential for a tornado here. And so here you go. You'll look at, and I'll put a marker on it for you guys, this little red dot that I'm going to put here. All right, that's our area of rotation, right where I put that little red dot. It's embedded within a lot of rain, so this would be a rain-wrapped tornado if there is one. And you can see that there's a little blip on our correlation coefficient. Now, that does not, in this instance, it doesn't necessarily ensure that a tornado is on the ground, but it leads me to believe that there's a slightly better chance that there may have been one that maybe touched down along Long Run Road in Washington County. This is not Jefferson County Long Run Road. This is Washington County, WB Carpenter Road. And again, it's heading toward Deep Creek, Key Road, Million Lane. Those spots potentially have a tornado over them at this time. Not a guarantee, but there is potential there. It may just be a bad read that's coming in, but it is lined up with our velocity couplet that we have that's going to stay north of Perryville, head toward Nevada, outside of our viewing area. Let's give this 5 more minutes for Washington County, and your severe weather threat will be done for the rest of the day, and you'll join the rest of us in just regular old rain for the rest of the morning and afternoon. But we've got 5 minutes that those that are Million Lane, those that are Deep Creek Road and Key Road, in that area, you got to make sure that you're in your safe place right now. If you recognize those spots, you travel them very frequently, your home's in that area, get into your safe place. Even with the latest scan that just came in, those higher, brighter colors just faded away. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times. This will be one of those scenarios that we watch a tornado warning for 2 hours, and it may never put anything down. And if it does, it's going to be usually briefer and weaker in nature. Now, at this point, we can say that there is a confirmed tornado on the ground in Washington County, moving out of the county and east. It's going to stay north of Perryville, head up toward Nevada. If you've got friends and family in that direction, give them a call. Let them know, hey, there's a rain-wrapped embedded tornado heading your direction. With that latest scan that just came in of correlation coefficient, we can very clearly see that there is debris in the air because this is where our rotation was. So, and we'll bring it back to the Weather Center here for just a second. This does not look like your typical supercell tornado. It doesn't even have that big bend if you had a line of storms. It doesn't have that big bend in the notch into it. This is totally rain-wrapped. It's isolated in nature. It's by itself. But here is our debris that's in the air from what I'm going to assume is a very weak tornado that probably touched down in southeastern Washington County and is lifting up, most likely, before it even crosses that line. It shouldn't stay on the ground long in these situations. The reason that we have this spin here in the atmosphere, the area of low pressure is directly over us, directly over southern Kentucky. So you've got speed shear going around this storm, and you've got directional shear with that low pressure. You've got counterclockwise flow. And that is enough on its own sometimes to even take what's basically a shower, a very weak storm, to spin up something fast, touchdown, lift back up, and it's done for the day. I think that that's what we're probably dealing with here in Washington County. You see all that purple box come up. They're saying that that is a confirmed tornado on the ground. Give it 2 or 3 more minutes. It's out of Washington County, and it's going to be north of Perryville. And so for those that have addresses along US 150 heading into Perryville, going east there, you want to make sure that you are in your safe place. I don't know if folks over near Danville watch us as well, but this will be most likely staying north of the Danville area. Harrodsburg, it'll stay south of you, but I think that from Perryville to Nevada, that'll be where we have that rotation. Let's go back to GR Analyst. We'll bring up those winds so we can see if the velocity couplet is still there. We'll go back to our GR Analyst here in just a second. But again, that purple box means a confirmed tornado on the ground. We've only got 18 more minutes of this warning. and only got a few more minutes before it is entirely out of Washington County. It's over Deep Creek Road, Key Road, Million Lane. In that area is where we've got this tornado that has touched down and caused damage. So back to GR Analyst, or Storm View is what you guys may refer to it as there. And we'll go back over, and even look at that. Latest scan came in, and that correlation coefficient, that green spot that you see right now, my cursor's over it. This green spot is our correlation coefficient value dropping, meaning that the items in the air are not the same. That was a tornado producing damage. Now you don't see all that debris in the air. You see very little left over, so there are probably just some leaves and things left over heading toward Nevada and Perryville and in between that area, right along United States Highway, US Highway 68. So Nevada to Perryville still has potential for a tornado, but at this point it looks like it is lifted and it's just got a little bit of small debris that's still in the air. We'll go back to our base velocity here, and you can see that velocity couplet has come down very quickly. So right here, the storm was tightening up. One more scan, the storm had tightened up enough to where we just started to see the first sign of a debris signature. And even as it was crossing out of Washington County, that velocity signature came down very rapidly, and so did our correlation coefficient values. They got back to what we would call back to 1, back to correlating with all the items in the air being basically the same thing, same size. So at this point, it is officially out of our viewing area. We'll give it one more scan just to keep an eye on things. I'm going to zoom out further because I do want to talk about the rest of the region, and we will come back to the Weather Center here for just a second because I really want to harp on this one thing for you guys. You're starting off your morning with rain. You may get some rumbles of thunder, especially in our southern and eastern counties. But everything that's happening north of the parkways has no chance of going severe. It's what we call stratiform rain. That's all it is. It's just showers. Absolutely no rotation up in that direction. You're north of the boundary. You're north of the warm front. You're north of the area of low pressure. Nothing can happen. When you're talking south of the parkways, you've got more of these storms. This is the area of rotation. Latest scan came in, it's died off a lot. Definition of weak, brief tornado just happened in southeastern Washington County. That's going to be all when it comes to our severe weather threat today. That's all that you have to worry about is now picking up the debris down in that direction. And I'm guessing that most of this is going to be tree damage and maybe mobile home damage or some siding, maybe a couple shingles ripped off of a roof. That's how I feel about the storm because it was, again, mid-level rotation was strong, about 2,500 to 3,500 feet off the ground, but how much of that actually made it down to the surface? Enough to cause some damage, but probably not all of it here. So I would guess that these winds are going to be on the low end of the scale, EF0 to weak EF1 with that tornado. That latest scan just came in, and it tells me that we are done with the tornado threat for Washington County. Producers, tell me if you would like us to continue with this until the warning expires, until they cut it out. But yeah, National Weather Service says that they're going to keep this warning on it as it rides along the warm front, heading north of Danville, north of Perryville at this point. And it's just not, it's not a concern for the rest of us here in the WDRB viewing area. But if you are just outside of our viewing area and you are north of Danville, Perryville, again, right here at the intersection of 68 and 150, it's going to move north of you guys. So if you have an address on the northern side of Perryville, you're going to make sure that you get into your safe place because this did produce a tornado briefly, could do it again, but it's not on the ground right now. So at this point, we're going to end our severe weather coverage because that storm has officially, while there's still a warning for Washington and Marion counties, we do not. Actually, Marion is taken out of it. Washington County is still in the warning, but you don't have a threat. There's no more tornado there. But if you're on Deep Creek Road, Key Road, Million Lane, and US 150 down in that direction, take it easy this morning. You're going to walk outside, most likely to some trees and tree limbs down. And again, you could have some roof damage in that area as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was some mobile home damage. Take it easy this morning. Careful on the roadways. Everyone else just dealing with some rain. And at this point, now that the storm is out of here, I can confidently say that our severe weather threat should be 0 from here on out. Guys.